April the 6th, 2026. Guys, I'm sure most of you are aware that a couple days ago, Trump gave Iran, or Tehran basically, an ultimatum that by Tuesday, tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, which will be 7 p.m. Central, that all hell's going to break loose in Iran. He said that we're going to take out power plants and bridges. Now, they got I think the Middle East's tallest bridge just about a week ago, knocked out the middle of it, and it had only been open about a year. It was huge. It was the highest bridge in the Middle East. But he had given them once a 48-hour kind of deadline time. Then he gave it 10 days, and that ended just a couple of days ago. And what he's got now is he's got Steve Witkoff over in the Middle East, and they're putting together via Pakistan, I think they're calling it the Islamabad Accord. Anyway, it's a peace deal. They didn't mention Kushner. He's usually right in the middle of that. Maybe they just left his name out. Anyway, the deadline, which is tomorrow, again, 8 p.m. Eastern, follows a series of extensions and ultimatums issued by the administration. This final ultimatum, after a previous 10-day window expired on Monday, April 6th, Trump issued a final 24-hour ultimatum. That's what we're dealing with now. Consequences of this is Trump has warned that if the deadline is not met, the U.S. will conduct massive strikes on Iran's infrastructure, specifically designating the following day as a power plant and bridge day. That's going to put a hurt on them because you've already got a lot of damage to certain power plants. And in mountainous regions, bridges can become very important, like passes. Now, it's not just Pakistan, but you've got Egypt and Turkey, and they're reportedly pushing for a 45-day ceasefire. I think Trump and our group has agreed to a 15 to 20-day, and these are temporary ceasefires, but the sticking point with Iran is that they want a permanent ceasefire. In other words, we'll open the straits, they say they will, but we want a permanent ceasefire. So I guess so they can go back to doing what they always did. Who knows? Of course, no one trusts what Iran says. Anyway, not their leadership. And so what we're dealing with here is Iran has said no to this deal as of now, but we have the negotiations going on. Again, Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey. Why them? Because they are the most effective. They should have been involved from Jump Street along with Europe. Now they're both going to pay a heavy price. Now, as of today, several sets of conditions have been proposed by both sides. The mediators, including Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey again, are there to establish a ceasefire in the ongoing conflict. They're calling it the Islamabad Accord. Mediators have presented a draft proposal for 45-day temporary truce intended to facilitate a permanent peace settlement within 15 to 20 days. The core conditions include an immediate ceasefire, a complete halt to all hostilities between the U.S., Israel, and Iran, and a reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran would immediately end its de facto blockade of the strategic waterway. And what they've done in this 10 days is let a handful of ships through at a time when they were averaging around 130, 140 ships per day coming through the strait. So it really was not giving much relief to anyone. But the proposal includes the lifting of international sanctions and the release of frozen Iranian assets. They should get nothing back because yesterday they proved that Obama, and we already knew it, had sent $150 billion into the Middle East. Now, it was supposed to be to rebuild roads and all, but yesterday's report saying nothing happened with that money as far as reconstruction or anything. Anyway, the nuclear and proxy commitments, requirements for Iran to dismantle the nuclear capabilities, or that's what they're talking about, and in support for the regional proxy groups. Who is that? The Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah, which goes to point out when people say Iran has never attacked another nation, they're full of it. They use their proxies to do it because the mullahs are cowards. Iran has rejected the idea of a temporary ceasefire, stating it would only allow adversaries to regroup. Their counter conditions for any deal include war reparations, guaranteed payment for all material and moral damages caused by U.S. and Israeli strikes. Good luck with that with Obama and Biden out of the office. Sovereignty over the Strait, formal recognition of the Iranian jurisdiction and authority over the Strait of Hormuz. They don't technically have that. It's split down the middle. And what they're doing is they are on a path to total destruction. They want this. Again, Satan does not like peace. He wants war. He wants destruction. There have been many gods of war in historical literature. Security guarantees, concrete, objective guarantees that the U.S. and its allies will not resume military action or target Iranian leadership. Now, they should put in here in parentheses, even if they act stupid, which they will. Closures of bases, the removal of all U.S. military bases from the Persian Gulf. That's not going to happen either. And so they're about to get the hell bombed out of them. Trump came on Truth Social yesterday morning, I think it was, using the F word, calling them bastards and everything, telling them you better reopen the straits now. We will know tomorrow. Now, the proposal that Wyckoff and his group are involved in, coming out of the White House, says it's a 15-point plan. The White House has previously circulated a maximalist 15-point plan through Pakistani intermediaries, which include nuclear dismantlement, missile limits, and maritime freedom, permanent end to uranium enrichment and the destruction of facilities in Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordo. And those places have been attacked. But, they had talked about getting the enriched uranium out of there. Missile limits, strict caps on the range and quantity of Iran's missile arsenal, which was not going to happen either because they're going to continue to build in underground caves and bunkers and basically underground cities. They've got some pretty big places there. And the ensuring the Strait of Hormuz remains a free maritime corridor. That's the U.S. administration's demands, just the opposite of Iran's. They want to control it all. Trump signaled some optimism about a deal but has not yet signed off to the 45-day proposal, maintaining its 8 p.m. Eastern Time Tuesday deadline for the straits to reopen. And a lot of us know about kind of what we're dealing with here. But the reason I came here and want to go through it is because as of today, analysts are warning that if the proposed peace deal fails and the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, oil prices could reach $200 per barrel by June this year. April, May, June. We're almost there. Crude oil is currently trading around $111 per barrel, having surged from roughly $55 to $70 before the conflict began in February. The market is experiencing extreme volatility, with prices whipsawing based on ceasefire rumors and President Trump's upcoming deadline. We talked about that, guys, how just a few words can change the stock market's projections and the price of oil and all of that. It can make it go up or make it go down. And guys, if you're not prepared for that type of pricing, we're all going to be in for a shock. But near term, before now and getting into June, they're saying $135 to $150 a barrel. Analysts from Oxford Economics and Kotak Securities suggest prices could hit $135 to $150 within weeks if the strait remains too dangerous for navigation. The $200 threshold, this is coming from the Macquarie Group. It's a group of strategists assign a 40% probability to oil hitting $200 if the conflict drags through the end of June. Extreme scenarios, $215 to $250 a barrel. Some experts, including those from the S&P Global Energy, warn that a total prolonged loss of 20% of global supply passing through the strait could push prices as high as $2.50 a barrel. And guys, that, you know what that relates to. Again, the price now is hard to deal with at $1.11 per barrel. And my old 2004 Tahoe, it's still running great. It handles 26 gallons in the tank. Now, you're talking about going from at $200 a barrel, averaging around $8 a gallon. At $2.50, you're dropping into 10, and in the states like California, $12. So you multiply that times the gallons in your tank, and if you're like me, I don't travel much anymore, but people that have to go back and forth to work, that's really going to take away all of their discretionary spending, all of it. Again, it's not just the hidden tax that the increase of gasoline makes happen. It's because of the transportation of all the other goods. So the price, you're paying more to get to work. And then you're paying more when you get paid on Friday to go get groceries because it costs the trucks twice as much to get it to you. And diesel has went from $3 to $6 a gallon already in some places. Now, the stock markets are all focused on tomorrow night at 8 p.m. If the deadline passes without a deal and it leads to a threatened strikes on Iranian infrastructure, a war premium, in quotation, war premium, spike is expected immediately. Now, as of today, economists and analysts from CNN Business and Yale Climate Connections project that if crude oil reaches $200 per barrel, U.S. gasoline prices would surge to approximately $7 per gallon. That's average, but you know the difference in, say, Mississippi is one of the lowest, and California because of that increased taxes. The national average reach, this again at $200 a barrel, a move to $200 is expected to shatter the previous U.S. record of $5.02 set in June 2022. I think that had to do with COVID maybe. Regional spikes in high tax or supply constrained areas like San Francisco, prices are already nearing $6 a gallon, with projections suggesting they could exceed $8 if the $200 oil scenario manifests. So add $2 to whatever you're getting there. But guys, that's being very conservative. And remember, that increase is just one of the hidden taxes. But everything else you're getting is included because of transportation costs to get it to you. Historically, every $10 increase in the price of a barrel of oil translates to roughly to 24 cents per gallon increase at the pump. And it doesn't take long. 4 increases and you're up another $1, right? Now, as of today, they're saying the average is already climbing rapidly due to the conflict. Current averages are $4.11.9 per gallon, up from $3.32 just a month ago, and this is from AAA. Weekly surge prices have risen over 11 cents this week alone as the market anticipates the expiration of Trump's deadline. Diesel impact. The diesel has already crossed the $5.50 mark, impacting freight and shipping costs nationwide. So guys, you don't expect groceries to go down or anything else to go down anytime soon because, again, $6 is not far from $5.50, and you're going to add a couple more dollars to that if it hits $200. And something I want to remind people of, we don't use that much of the oil from the Middle East. And Trump is talking about rebuilding our national strategic reserve, right? Getting all that built up because to try it, if we have that, that gives us about 120 days, 90 to 120 days of backup, and that would help keep some prices down. But what you don't realize, I mean, not everyone, is the fact that that national reserve is oil. It's not gasoline. It has to be taken out of those reserve tanks, transported by a pipeline to refineries, taking 2 to 3 weeks to get it from there to gasoline. And what has the price been, what has happened to the price in that 2 to 3 weeks? So you're not just, when you talk about the strategic reserve, you just don't open a valve and get gasoline out of those big tanks. Now, analysts from Oxford Economics warn that the price above 425 typically trigger demand destruction, where consumers significantly cut back on driving and spending. What happens when you do that? All of the non-necessary things, like you're not able to eat out anymore or go to shows or whatever you're doing because you can barely get food and gas, so that all the restaurants start going out of business, all the caterers, all the people in those type of jobs start going out of business. It says the household burden, it is estimated the average U.S. household will spend an additional $857 on gasoline alone this year if the strait remains restricted just through April. Well, this came out, guys, about a month ago. We are in April. So, it's an overall tax on everything you deal with, lumber, food, whatever. But guys, if you look at this over like a yearly average, it's amazing. And that's why I would say many people are going to go back to their old electric golf carts, stick a few solar panels on top of them to get back and forth just to get groceries, if they can get them. So this accord, or this peace agreement, guys, is going to be the one of the most important ever because of the world economy. But as of today, economists from Taxan 24 and S&P Global warn that if crude oil reaches $2.50 a barrel, the U.S. would face a catastrophic global oil shock, with gasoline prices potentially hitting $9 per gallon in some regions. Again, if you got a Tahoe like mine, you put 9 times 26. Think about that, $250 to fill up your vehicle. Now, how many times do you have to do that in a week, or then put that into a month, and then that into a year? You'll look at the end of discretionary spending, let's put it that way. Gasoline prices. Retail gas could soar to $6 to $9 a gallon. Nationwide, metro areas like Dallas and Houston could see pumps reach $6.50 to $8.50, with high-cost regions like the West Coast would likely exceed $9. S&P Global estimates that for every 10% rise in oil prices, U.S. headline inflation increases by 0.15%. At $250 oil, which is a 125% increase from today's $111 a barrel, annual inflation could quickly jump from its current 2.4% to over 6%. Now, Powell would probably jump with joy if he's not hung. Anyway, extreme scenarios. The Nobel laureate Paul Krugman, you've seen him on many shows, has warned that if physical shortages become acute due to a prolonged Strait of Hormuz closure, prices theoretically, looking at the math, would spike as high as $372 per barrel, triggering a severe global recession. I would call it a depression at that point, and it's not far from it now. But this sustained price of $2.50 a barrel would drastically increase the cost of basically everything due to the heavy reliance of oil in the supply chain. Guys, tires, plastics, everything. Now, diesel prices are up. We said that. Now, the nationwide average is $4.78 per gallon, and that's 30% up this month. Think about that. But if it, at $200 a barrel, you go to $7, and that directly raises the cost of shipping, groceries, everything else. But now your higher states is going to be even more than that, and you're going into $8 if you go to $2.50. But oil is the primary input for fertilizers, plastics, the fuel used for farming machinery. Economists from the street note that grocery prices, which already rose 0.4% last month, would see large price swings in categories like beef, fresh vegetables, and fats. Again, think greenhouses, gardens. Analysts are warning that these levels would force demand destruction in the household budgets, where households are forced to choose between fuel and other essentials, potentially leading to government rationing or no drive days to manage dwindling supplies. You see where we're going with this? You ever heard of that horse that has the scales on it? They talk about famine in this group. Now, the Federal Reserve would likely be forced again to keep interest rates high to combat energy-driven inflation, which is an oxymoron to me. Making mortgages, car loans, and credit card debt significantly more expensive. That's why Powell has used that excuse for over 4 years, and it has just the opposite effect. High uncertainty typically leads businesses to halt hiring and capital investment until the geopolitical situation stabilizes. So it's a big change. It's almost a reset. If they have a full reset, it will be another phoenix out of the ashes situation. So if you've ever been in the situation to where you wanted to prepare or you felt like you needed to prepare, if you're on a farm, you got the tanks where you can hold the extra fuel for diesel and gas and things like that, do it. Get you some long-term survival food. Stock up on canned goods. Long-term may not be important. Short-term may do it. And with canned goods, you usually got a year or two, and things like that. But again, gardens, just change your whole attitude, because being hopeful is one thing, and I'm hopeful that this is over with. Our troops get back home, the money stays here for a while, and we get our nation built back. But it looks like between the rhinos, the Democrats, and other leaders worldwide, Satan is in control. I've said it many times. These evil spirits that went forth to the kings of the earth to lead them to the wars, we're there. But you don't want to be caught off guard. We don't know how long a major conflict or major depression would last with the wars going on and everything around us, but there are 2 places in the Bible that it mentions 5 months. Once in the Old Testament, once in the New Testament. There was 150 days in the ark, remember that? Another 5 months was the time the locust army had in the book of Revelation. So is that an indication at all? I've always used it as kind of something on the shelf to think about. Was the 5 months in both books a indication to us that, and especially in Revelation, that's how long we've got to be prepared for utter chaos before our Father steps in, His Son steps in? Don't know yet, guys, but I'll tell you what, I was going to end the video. Let's look now. They're saying oil at $2.11 a barrel. Let's just look at the current, because it changes by the second, current info with the background of negotiations going on minute by minute also. Now, I think the stock markets have really missed the point of being a stock market for a long time. Here they're saying the S&P 500 rises as investors await possible Iran and U.S. ceasefire. Don't let the market be balanced or based on your hopes. Let it be based on the facts. If it doesn't go through, if it doesn't go through, the S&P will fall. If it goes through, let it rise tomorrow when it's over. Don't do this up and down speculation. It's like betting, and that's basically what they're doing. Dow's, everything's kind of flat. Dow's at 39, S&P 750, NASDAQ 45, Russell 2K 5, and our volatility index called the VIX is at 0.5. Not bad compared to what we've seen. Now, at 10:30, as of 10:37 a.m. Central, that's right now, we're up another $1 from the estimates. It was $1.11, now it's $1.12.3. Brent at 109, natural gas 282, Murban, which is jet fuel, Middle Eastern jet fuel, and rocket fuel, things like that, is 117. Guys, this spiked a few weeks ago to 149, right in the middle of a lot of bombing, and now they really take advantage of it, don't they? But again, we're up $1 here. Brent is usually higher than oil. It's just the markets are kind of crazy. But we were told another Old Testament statement that in the end time we would be ruled by babes, and he was talking about mental babes, okay? Very childlike attitudes, reactions, thoughts, and that's what we have elected. Anyway, we're watching it. We're going to make it through it. We're going to be prepared. You guys, that's why you're here. Our Father's election will stand tall. In these end times, you will be a rock to stand on in a tsunami of lies and threats. And how do you do that? First, you have to understand who our Father is and how powerful He is, and then you stand on Him. He is the rock, and the words of Jesus Christ are the rock. Not the words of the Roman rhinos, the words of Jesus Christ. That is the living word. So you hang on to that. And when you see people in trouble coming up in these next few days and months of what we would call the tribulation points, then you stand tall for them. Show them the way. That's how you become the pillars in the temple of our Father, the elect. We're watching it, guys. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.